this is a response to John Campea's reaction to a question given by a subscriber to him. And I was watching his streaming on YouTube. I do watch John Campea. I still agree with him on a number of things. And I think he has a, generally speaking, a pretty decent perspective on things. So shout out to John Campea. But his answer, again, I disagree with. And it was someone who subscribed to his channel who asked him this question. He said he believes that Justice League will pass $1 billion. And what does John Campea think about that? And John Campea said not necessarily. In fact, at this present point in time, he doesn't think that Justice League will actually pass $1 billion. He thinks it might get to $900 million. And he expressed apprehension after Batman v Superman, where he thought Batman v Superman would easily pass $1 billion and get somewhere near to $2 billion maybe. Now, in response to John Campea's statements, I think there's something that John Campea keeps on missing. And I was, to some degree, on the Batman v Superman hype train where I thought, $2 billion, definitely. Batman v Superman crossed $2 billion. I was on the hype train too. But the difference here with this situation and Justice League crossing $1 billion is that we're not dealing with elements from other universes or other directors for that matter. We're dealing with precedents in the same universe. So where John Campea is saying that, with Batman v Superman, we were sort of hyped and we were thinking Batman's in this movie, Superman's in this movie, Wonder Woman might show up in this movie. Oh, definitely $2 billion. We were just going off of emotion. We weren't looking at box office. We had no precedent. The only precedent we really had was Man of Steel in this universe. Remember, Man of Steel was directed by a DCEU director. However, the Nolan trilogy was directed by Christopher Nolan. It was a different Batman in a different universe. It operated differently and everything. So a lot of people, I know that the common fan wouldn't think about that, but still, there were two major things I think that told me that Batman v Superman wasn't going to make $2 billion. That was out of the question, right? The notion was great, and I was hyped for it and was reading it, but there was no way it was going to make $2 billion now. On looking in retrospect, there was no way. And Scott Mendelson was the only voice of reason that actually said if it doesn't make $1 billion, it doesn't mean anything. And Scott Mendelson was the one that gave the projections, and his projection was actually quite reasonable. He said it was between $720 million he expected the movie to make and $850 million. It turned out to make a little bit more than that. It made $873 million. So Scott Mendelson's realistic projections, he called it, for Batman v Superman were actually what worked out. And Scott Mendelson is not really fond of the DCEU, I'll be honest with you. He loved Wonder Woman though. So we really had unrealistic expectations about Batman v Superman, and that's probably because as fans, we weren't really thinking box office and precedent and what was going on. It was also the second movie in the DCEU. I mean, in no cinematic universe has the second movie in any cinematic universe, and we basically have the MCU right now, but there are a bunch of other cinematic universes that are looking to open. But nonetheless, there is really no cinematic universe that the second movie in that universe has broken $1 billion. It's never really happened. We've had sequels that did that, but not movies in the cinematic universe doing that. And the reason why that is so difficult to do, if we're really being realistic here, is because there's no context for the characters. We still don't have, we're still getting to know them. So, for instance, in Batman Begins, we got to know Batman, right? And then after knowing Batman, the Dark Knight was able to be shaped around that Batman figure. And we added other characters. And we really were getting to know the Joker a lot more in that movie, having known Batman, because we had Batman Begins gave us a lot of background on Batman. With Batman v Superman, we were getting to know the characters. It was kind of an origin film for a number of characters, for Batman, for Lex Luthor, for Wonder Woman, for, just little sprinkles for the Justice League. So it was really more of an origin film than it really was a sequel. The only character we were actually following in that movie, and he wasn't the primary character, the primary character of that movie was actually Batman, was Superman. But Superman was basically viewed by Batman, viewed by Lex Luthor, viewed by the world. So Superman wasn't really the main protagonist of that movie. We weren't moving along with Superman, if you understand. We weren't seeing things from Superman's perspective. That happened in Man of Steel. That didn't happen in Batman v Superman. We're basically seeing things from Lex Luthor's perspective, from Batman's perspective, and from the world's perspective about Superman. Alright, so it was a little bit different. Even though it was a Superman movie. So it really was unrealistic to expect that movie to make, $200 billion. Now, for it to cross $1 billion, it was a reasonable expectation, I think. But because of the critical reception and just the hate towards that movie, I believe that movie did not make $1 billion. But it did come damn close to it. It was 100 and something million away from $1 billion. So even though the critical reception did hurt it, it still ended up with a pretty damn high figure that no DCU movie has touched so far. Alright, having said that, we're talking about Justice League. And Justice League has precedent. It has foundation. And it has continuity. And part of its continuity is Wonder Woman, who will appear in Justice League. And the thing about Wonder Woman is this. Wonder Woman was critically accepted and also universally accepted. And currently it's going to do two things for certainty. It's going to cross $400 million at the box office domestically, if it hasn't done that already. And it's going to cross $800 million at the domestic box office. Unofficially, it's done that already. Officially, we're still waiting for the numbers from Box Office Mojo. When I say unofficially Wonder Woman has passed the domestic total, it's because Screen Rant posted an article saying Wonder Woman passes $400 million domestically, and they go off a variety that says over this weekend it will do so. Whether it does so over the end of this weekend, excuse me, or it does so during the beginning of this week is really quite irrelevant because we know it's going to do that. We also know that more or less it's very likely that it's going to pass Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. Not that it matters because Wonder Woman is the reigning champion in superheroes currently. Okay, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man since 2002. We have a totally different Spider-Man and Tom Holland's Spider-Man. And he ain't touching Wonder Woman anytime soon in the box office. Neither globally or domestically. He's not going to do it. Okay? And no comic book hero currently in their debut or in their original movie is going to do that. Or has done that. Okay? So she is the queen of comic book movies. There's no king. Alright? And that's just a fact. My point being this. If this movie's making over $800 million and over $400 million domestically, those people who made that possible and came to see that movie, guess what they're going to do with Justice League? That's right. They're going to go see Justice League. And that alone tells me you're talking about $800 million worth of people and change coming to see just Wonder Woman in the Justice League. And she has a key role in the Justice League. So they're definitely not going to be satisfied. They're going to get Wonder Woman from start to finish. They're going to love Wonder Woman. So that alone, and she's not coming alone. She's coming with the Amazons, Themyscira, the whole 9 yards. She's bringing her whole squad up in Justice League. That alone will push Justice League over $1 billion alone. But then remember, people are going to go see Justice League because of Batman. We got Batman fans. And then whoever likes what they see with Aquaman are going to go see Justice League just for that. So just the promotion has promoted these characters. Cyborg not as much. People are still not hyped up on Cyborg, but people are hyped up on Aquaman. Some people like The Flash. Those are major reasons why people will just go to see Justice League movie once. So even without critical reception to boost the film, to really give it that boost, this film is destined to cross $1 billion because all of the characters we're talking about are already in this universe, and we've seen them at least once. We've seen all of them in little snippets. We've seen The Flash in action. We've seen Aquaman in action. We've seen Cyborg in action. And then, of course, there are the characters that we haven't seen yet in the trailers, Superman and Green Lantern, who we know are going to be in this universe. And we already seen, we have a badass villain in Steppenwolf. So I'm just saying, this movie, just based on the hype, the background of the three main Trinity characters, and the fact that some of these characters we really are anticipating seeing, that anticipation is going to spill off from week 1 to week 2 to week 3. And if this movie is crap for those 3 weeks alone, it's going to make a ton of money. It'll have ridiculous drops, but it's going to make a ton of money. And that alone, those 3 weekends alone, will carry it over $1 billion. Even if it's crap. Because it's going to be people from many different demographics that are just going to go see the movie. So it's not a question of whether this movie will cross $1 billion. We know that's a kind of given that it will do that. And that's not unrealistic expectations, because all of the characters we have been seeing and the framework and the groundwork for them has been in the DCEU. Here's another reason why Wonder Woman, not Wonder Woman, but the Justice League will cross $1 billion. People are getting used to the DCEU. In its second movie, Batman v Superman, people were not used to the DCEU yet. And Batman v Superman was a baptism into getting used to this. People were used to the Marvel, the MCU. And so they were used to light, funny, not deep characters. Batman v Superman introduced them to a whole other demographic. But since then, people have gotten used to the environment, the kind of characters, and it prepped them. And you had Marvel fans who liked Suicide Squad. A lot of Marvel people came across. They still were dedicated to Marvel. They still like Marvel movies, but they started to get used to the DCEU and what it brought. And they liked, there's a ridiculous fan base for Suicide Squad, right? There's a whole, from 13 years of age to their late 20s, those people will die telling you they love Suicide Squad. I know, because they have groups on YouTube, groups on Facebook, which just love Suicide Squad. They're still talking about Suicide Squad to this day. And we saw what happened with the DVDs and the Blu-rays. Suicide Squad outsold Civil War. It outsold Batman v Superman. It outsold Age of Ultron. And a ton of other Marvel movies. Okay? And DCEU movies. The only thing it didn't outsell was Man of Steel. So, my point anyway is, people are getting warmed up to it. And you can see it in the box office, right? So you see Man of Steel is the lowest. We skip Batman v Superman. Suicide Squad was next. And it's got higher, and Wonder Woman has gotten higher, and Wonder Woman's going to chase down Batman v Superman, as I said before, get somewhere between 50 to 40 to the high 30s million away from Batman v Superman. Okay, it's not going to pass Batman v Superman, but it's going to get damn close. Okay, well, when I say damn close, I mean pretty close. I mean more than Suicide Squad. So basically, Warner Bros. Has been grossing in more and more money, because why are they grossing in more and more money for these films? Because more and more people are coming to see the films. And there's a lot more rewatchability as people get to value the DCEU. It's very young. When the MCU was that young, the MCU wasn't making noise. It was only Iron Man they had. They didn't have nothing else. The Hulk flopped. Thor flopped. Well, it didn't flop, but it didn't do that great. And then we had Iron Man 2, okay? So this is totally different. And the other thing that's interesting about this is the variety of directing. You get all these different directors. And different directors appeal to different people. Now we're going back to Zack Snyder. So people are saying, oh my gosh, Zack Snyder. But not really. Because the other factor you're not paying attention to is, yes, it's going to be all Zack Snyder. With Wonder Woman, it was all Zack Snyder and his story and the people who were doing the action scenes and all of the artists and stuff. It was a lot of Zack Snyder all up in there, and the story was Zack Snyder's story, you could tell. But the difference was Patty Jenkins and her Jeff Johns and Alan Heinberg and Jason Fuchs, who made it all different, because Zack does very well with collaborations, apparently. And yes, this movie is now going to be Zack directing it. It's primarily a Zack directed movie. But the difference is, while Zack's going to probably have input into post-production edits, Joss Whedon is doing some of the reshoots, a small amount, minor reshoots, but nonetheless, Joss Whedon is a part of this process, and Danny Elfman. And from the last Comic-Con sneak peek trailer that I saw, they do make a difference to how this reception of this film will be. Joss Whedon will make a huge difference in the universal acceptance of this film. I have to say it. I'm 100% sure that is so. And they're not going to do it in very obvious ways, but you're going to feel the difference. It's still going to feel like a Zack Snyder film, but just the way how it's edited and the way how it looks at certain points, going to feel like Zack Snyder on steroids. And you'll be like, Zack Snyder's so clear in what he's saying. And you get the point of the movie, and you're going to be invested in certain characters, and you will not know exactly why. That's Joss Whedon. I'm just going to let you guys know. And he's working so fervently right now. He's like so passionate when he digs his teeth into something. He's so passionate about it. And he really takes personal responsibility for not delivering to audiences. So I truly believe this Joss Whedon, Zack Snyder composite partnership, even if Zack Snyder is still being involved in Justice League on the side, but he's not saying anything. The less that we talk about Zack Snyder, the more people are going to be receptive to Justice League for reasons unknown to me. There's just this unmitigated hate towards Zack. So even if Zack's doing a lot of work in the background with Joss, they're still going to give Joss the credit for it. And it's kind of unfair. But I will tell you this. If Joss wasn't involved in this project, we wouldn't have Justice League this year. Okay? And then all of Zack's efforts would have gone to vain. So I'm very glad Joss is on this for multiple reasons. The first reason is, this is the guy that made Marvel break out with the Avengers. He's exceptionally good at interaction and interplay between characters, even if he ain't got much to work with in terms of substance. And now he's getting a film with a lot of substance, and all he has to do is focus in the characters you need to really focus in on to carry you through the story so that you can care about all the characters in the story. And the other thing that he does, which Patty Jenkins did, was he's able to very skillfully pull your emotions with certain characters. And he's going to have a lot to play with in terms of that. I know he was hesitant to take on this project because it was a different director, and usually it's not ideal to be following after a director. But the thing about it is, I'm pretty sure Zack's going to be 100%, if he's not already, 100% supportive of Joss Whedon. Whatever he needs, Zack's going to be there for him. So I don't really feel like this is going to be like, say, for instance, Fantastic Four. This is not the same. And so I just absolutely am happy about that. I'm kind of sad that Junkie's off the project, but I do understand Danny Elfman has taken that music to a whole other level. That Man of Steel vibe at the end of that trailer pumped me so much. So I am absolutely believing that Joss Whedon is just another reason why this film is going to make over $1 billion. Because he's only directed films that have made over $1 billion in ensemble films. Just what it is. So, based on the track record of all of these factors I just mentioned, this is the reason why this film resoundingly makes over $1 million. There's no reservation about that, and there's no rocket science to that. But that's not really the question you should be asking. The question you really should be asking is this question. Will this film be universally received? That's the question. And the answer to that question, I believe, lies in Joss Whedon's way how he actually handles this film. That's absolutely in Joss Whedon's hands. It's not in Zack Snyder's hands, because Zack Snyder hasn't made recently a universally accepted film. And that's just fact. And the thing about it is, Zack Snyder has a whole lot of more input into this film. But as we've seen, Zack Snyder his fingerprints can be all over a movie. He wrote the story for Wonder Woman, and not wrote the story, but he's behind the story for Wonder Woman. The script was written by Alan Heinberg, I think it is. But and Jeff Johns and John Berg and John Fuchs, Jason Fuchs, sorry. But at the end of the day, Zack was all over that. Now, Zack is even in a much more intimate way involved in Justice League and has a lot more say in it. So, Joss Whedon, he's going to be walking that fine line. But I believe Zack, just watching at the success of Wonder Woman and the universal acceptance, he's not going to try to, shall I say, bully. I just don't see Zack being that kind of guy, bullying Joss Whedon into. No, he's probably giving Joss Whedon full reign. do what you need to do. Just make sure this movie comes out November 17th. He's like, nah, this movie gotta go. We gotta get this movie out the way so we can move on. And I think that's what Zack's not like a selfish kind of dude. So at the end of the day, I think Joss Whedon has free reign as to what he wants to do with this movie. And while it's not a Joss Whedon movie because Zack did most of the work, I do think he's doing a very critical part of the movie, which is the post-production edits. The editing of this movie is huge because how it looks, how it feels. While it will be Zack Snyder, and it'll feel and look like a Zack Snyder movie, but just the way how Joss rearranges things and enhances things with Danny Elfman and Jeff Johns and Zack and John Berg is going to make this movie so much better than any other Zack Snyder movie you've seen before. And that is key. I think Joss Whedon is going to pull this off. I think he's going to pull it off. I really do. I have confidence. I remember saying earlier on that, and it's based on the Comic-Con sneak peek I saw, trailer. That's why I say he's going to pull it off. Because it's so subtle, the little tweaks they've done in this movie. Their advertising for the movie has changed some. But yet, it's still in the spirit of Zack Snyder. It still has that darkness to it. It still has that edginess to it. I truly believe that this team up, and I think Jeff Johns has a lot of say in this, but he's always had a lot of say. But I think Zack had a lot more say as to what was happening, and now Zack's kind of surrendered his sayings like, do what you need to do. Wonder Woman's a success. Do what you need to do. So I think they're not going to, because they need to. They can't afford to make this not a Zack Snyder film. They know it's a fine line because the core base that supports this movie, they can't afford to lose the core base. And the core base that has been pushing this DCU are Zack Snyder fans. So they know they can't lose that. What they have to do is enhance that core base. And I think they're looking for ways to enhance this movie, but not take it away from Zack Snyder, because this is his film. So they're walking a fine line, and you've heard it from the president himself. The president himself said this is a Zack Snyder movie. It's got to have a Zack Snyder tone. He emphasized that for a reason. He wasn't willy-nilly with it either. All right? Because you change the tone of this movie, there's a couple of things that are going to happen. One, the Zack Snyder base is going to leave. You don't want that happening. Two, a film with a dual tone that doesn't seem like it knows what it wants to do, that's a recipe for disaster. That's Fantastic Four kind of stuff going on there. That's a disaster film. So they know they can't afford to mess this up. And the problem, the quandary that Joss Whedon is in, and which is why he was kind of hesitant to take the role, was he was saying, man, the worst possible scenario is for me to come off of a director who's kind of left. He has his vision, and I have to direct behind him. That's scary. So that's why he probably initially said, I don't want no part of that. It's your movie. You do what you do. Now that he is a part of this, he doesn't want his name, to be associated with something negative. So Joss Whedon is going to be working his butt off to make sure, and he's very hard on himself. He said that Avengers Age of Ultron was his biggest failure. That's what he said. So Joss Whedon's not the kind of guy to take responsibility he has lightly. I just admire that. I admire that this guy, if people try to blame Zack Snyder for the failings of Justice League, Joss Whedon's going to chime in and say, I failed. This is the kind of guy that takes it personally. Like, he takes his name on something, whether it's there or not, just the fact that he's directing or anything like that, he takes it seriously. And I like that. I really like that. So I'm looking forward to, I think Joss Whedon makes a big difference with this film. I think Zack Snyder picked the right guy. I think Joss Whedon does not want to be associated with something that is negatively spoken about. And this is the guy that really propelled Marvel forward, even though his Age of Ultron wasn't that great as the Avengers movie. And even the fans, the Marvel fans, they are not hard on Joss Whedon like that for Age of Ultron. And it made mad money anyway. So I just want to say that Joss Whedon, I hope he actually gets a job at Marvel again. because I see that directors can jump from Marvel to DC to Marvel, and I'm glad about that. To be honest with you, I say Marvel and DC should use the best possible director they can possibly get, unless a director has a contract for like 3 years or whatever with a particular house, should I say. I don't think it's a problem. So anyway, that is my little $150 billion word essay. I'm just being funny. I have to go out and sell, so I need to get out of here. That's my 2 cents on this issue. I think that this is my opinion. I try to give you some facts, or try to give you some reasoning why I think it will definitely cross $1 billion. That's not. I don't think that's going to be the problem. I think the problem is universal acceptance. I think Warner Brothers right now, they got one that knocked one film out of the park in Wonder Woman, and they want to knock another one out of the park in Justice League, and they're not sparing anything. What is it you guys need? Money? What do you need to make this happen? We want another success like Wonder Woman. That's what they want. And let me tell you something. Thor is coming before Justice League. So Justice League has no real repercussions for Thor Ragnarok, but Infinity War is coming after. Imagine if Justice League is universally accepted and they get raving reviews for Justice League, right? Excuse me. You saw Wonder Woman did so well that it helped Spider-Man Homecoming. It didn't hinder Spider-Man Homecoming, and it didn't compete with Spider-Man Homecoming. People were going to Wonder Woman and they were going to Spider-Man Homecoming, right? Justice League, if it gets raving reviews, sets up Infinity War perfectly, because Infinity War will have a ton more characters in it. It's going to have a ton of characters in it. You can see the Marvel Cinematic Universe for what it is, and Marvel's going to the next level. They're going to a higher level than DC would be, in that they have all these characters on display, and they're going to show you the glory of Marvel. I don't know what they have after that. But Infinity War is definitely almost the pinnacle that Marvel could show. They're going to show you all the possibilities, all their array of characters. You saw Jeff Johns display all the array of characters in the DC universe as well, the DCEU, in the beginning of Wonder Woman. Because DC also has that perspective to show, this is all the characters we have. This is what we got to display. All right, they wanted to do the same thing. Now, like I said, and I'm beginning to realize what's going on. Eventually, somewhere down the road, we're going to have these crossovers between Marvel and DC. We're going to have crossovers. We're definitely going to have it. And that, my friends, is going to be the most exciting time in comic book history, because the thing that Marvel does so well, and they do their research so well with their demographics, is they're able to capture characters that actually have a lighter side to them. And the DC characters, they have a certain gravity to them. So when you combine the lighter side characters, which do still give moral values and they do give nice tropes. I mean, Captain America is a much more grounded, deep character, okay? Captain America is a much more serious tone character of the Marvel characters. But if you look at Iron Man, and you look at all the other characters, they have this sort of levity to them. Ant-Man, Iron Man, Guardians of the Galaxy, even Thor. They started off serious with Thor, but they couldn't really keep him serious, so he's kind of more, he still has a levity to him. But my point anyways, I'm digressing. You take that sort of universe and you put it with the DC universe, I'm telling you, man, it's a recipe for euphoria. Okay, I've been watching at the two different universes and paying attention to them, and there's a recipe for not just fun but also gravity, and that's beautiful, because DC characters are not really funny characters. They're not going for laughs. Yet Marvel characters, they're light, they're fluffy, they're kind of funny. You go for laughs. You combine the two together, you really get an awesome package film. Because it's going to be highly entertaining, but yet there's going to be these dramatic moments with such heavy gravity to them that you're going to be traumatized sometimes. So you'll be laughing your head off at one moment, traumatized another moment. It calls for quite a ride, okay? So I don't know what else to say to you guys, but I can just, I'm telling you, that's the pinnacle right there. When the two universes collide, and crossovers actually start to happen. We have Wonder Woman with Conan the Barbarian. That's a series that's going to come out, and that's going to be amazing. And I just wish they'd have more crossover comics. Maybe that'll start to happen. That would be awesome. We had some crossovers with Sony and Marvel, MCU, in terms of Spider-Man. I hope there's going to be more crossovers. And then with the other universes, the Dark Universe and Transformers universe, the Spider-Man spin-off universe, the Dark Tower Stephen King universe, the possibilities get ridiculous after a while. Where if you start to sort of kind of switch over universes, it can get really interesting. Really interesting, really fast. But all these universes have to develop first. And just imagine a universe. We already have the Dark Universe, but nonetheless, just imagine if we had a spin-off where the Mummy comes across the bar to Captain America, for instance. Or we have already, Warner Brothers already has a Dark Universe, but just imagine, Justice League Dark is what but just imagine some of the characters from Stephen King's universe crossover, or Transformers universe crossover, or even Power Rangers universe cross over to the DCU or the MCU or whatever. I mean, it's just think about it. That's a kid's dream. That's a kid's Transformers. In any universe is cool. In any universe is cool. So I'm just saying, that's the ultimate level where we start to have crossovers with different characters from different universes. It'll take a while before that happens, but that will blow your mind. In the meantime, guys, you guys have a great one. This is my last movie video for the day. You guys have a great one.